9 days ago, all was well in the world if you were an Oklahoma Sooner fan. You're coming off a 49-14 thrashing of rival Nebraska the week before, hosting a Kansas State team that didn't look very good the week before that, and losing 17-10 to Tulane. And you have a number 7 ranking looking like first-year head coach Brent Venables going just as planned. Everything's perfect. 9 days later, the Sooners are no longer ranked after losing back-to-back games to Kansas State and this week to TCU, 55-24, in what was even more embarrassing for Brent Venables' defense and may have cost the Sooners their starting quarterback for the foreseeable future. Nine days ago, all was right in the world in Norman, Oklahoma, and for the Oklahoma Sooners football program. 9 days later, the whole thing is completely opposite of that, as the Sooners have now dropped out of the top 25, coming off of back-to-back losses to Kansas State and this week to TCU, 55-24, in a game that you could only really call just a complete and utter dominance by the Horned Frogs, and over a team that now looks pretty much completely lost in comparison. Hello, everybody. I am Jason Watkins, and welcome to the Hall of Fame College Football Podcast. If you love college football, you are definitely in the right place. So before you forget, smash that red subscriber button for me. Like our videos, and don't forget to ring the bell so that you don't miss one moment of the Hall of Fame College Football Podcast. This is a tough week as we recap week 5 of the college football season. We focus today on the demise of the Oklahoma Sooners, who, as I said, 2 weeks ago were ranked number 7. As of today, Monday morning, they are not ranked anymore in the top 25. It's, well, it couldn't be any more different today than it was 2 weeks ago. When you coming into a Monday after their game, everybody was riding high there in Norman. Some people, and this has been kind of going on throughout the off season, where everybody has these expectations of, and we're starting to get these expectations or even bolstering them maybe, of them making the playoff even and possibly winning a national title in Venables' first season. We will also talk about today, for the second straight week, Sooner fans have gone pretty much off the rails and are now calling for the head of new head coach Brent Venables, who, as again 2 weeks ago, was the savior of all saviors if you were listening to most fans on social media talking about Oklahoma. Oklahoma State got 2 late interceptions in Waco to stop Baylor 36-25. Kansas, the Jayhawks, moved to 5-0 on the season. They beat Iowa State 14-11 in an pretty amazing game, and just what a freaking turnaround for this program. 1 year after going 2-9 in the first season for Lance Leopold in Lawrence. Kansas State runs its Big 12 conference record to 2-0 with a 37-28 victory over Texas Tech Saturday in Manhattan. And the Texas Longhorns saved Steve Sarkisian's job for at least another week, beating visiting West Virginia 38-20 as well. Folks, if you would like to support our show and support our content, we have a great way for you to do it. We have teamed up with the #1 team merchandise retailer in the world, Fanatics, to help bring you amazing prices on the team gear that you buy anyway. All you have to do to help out the show, jump on our website, hofmedia.us/fanatics. That's hofmedia.us/fanatics. Click on the Fanatics logo, the blue logo at the bottom of that page. Then you just go onto the site, shop as you normally would. We will get a small commission for each purchase you make going through our link on that page. It's very important for us to be able to continue bringing you content week after week and talking to you about the things that you want to hear. Also, by going through that, we have exclusive deals through Fanatics for being a partner. You're not going to get a better deal than using our link anyway. So this is a win-win for everybody. Again, check us out at hofmedia.us/fanatics. That's hofmedia.us/fanatics. Then just shop as normal after you click on the Fanatics logo at the bottom of the page. Save money and help this podcast continue to be able to bring you great content week after week. Coming in as a defensive coach and linchpin for a Clemson team that won 2 national titles with him as the defensive coordinator with dominant defenses. We all probably expect more than we probably should have coming into the season, particularly with the losses that came with the defection of Lincoln Riley at the end of last season. This is not the same football team that went 11-2, and these last 2 weeks have shown that quite vividly. TCU started off a ball of fire, scored touchdowns on 3 of their first 4 possessions, and Dylan Gabriel, quarterback for the Sooners, went out early in the second quarter after Jamari Hodge hit the sliding Sooner quarterback with a cheap shot, bounced his head off the ground, looked to have knocked him completely out of the game, or completely out, and definitely he left the game not to return. He appears to be in the concussion protocol, and one would figure that with all the controversy surrounding Tua Tagovailoa and the Miami Dolphins possibly playing him earlier than they should have, and him getting 2 concussions in 2 weeks, I don't really expect Oklahoma's going to really take chances here. I'm doubting that you'll see Dylan Gabriel this week as Oklahoma takes on its biggest rival, the Texas Longhorns, in the Red River Shootout. One can only hope, that he's back sooner than later, to be honest with you, but I don't expect it's going to be this week. They probably would need him to have a whole lot of a chance in this game. As of right now, it appears that they're going to have to score as many points as possible to stay in any game, because this defense, it looks real bad. Max Duggan went 23 of 33 for 302 yards and 3 touchdowns through the air. He added 5 rushes for 116 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground as well. That's 418 total yards and 5 touchdowns overall, as TCU jumped out to a 41-17 halftime lead and kind of boat raced Oklahoma from start to finish. Just making really this defense looks completely different than it did the first 3 weeks of the season. Obviously, the level of competition has stepped up with Big 12 play, but this doesn't look anything like a Brent Venables defense. Certainly doesn't look anything like the first few weeks. And it's left pretty much everybody reeling and wondering if Oklahoma can win another game this season. The only one that you would expect them to definitely win, and I don't know how definite it would even be, would be against West Virginia. If you can't stop anybody, especially running the ball, Oklahoma gave up 361 rushing yards to the Horned Frogs this weekend. I don't know how you can win a game in the Big 12. everybody's going to run the football on them. Now we can see that. Adrian Martinez 2 weeks ago for Kansas State looked like a Heisman candidate. Duggan looked even more like one this week. Both of them Duggan had over 418 total yards. Adrian Martinez had 382 yards total the week before that. Both of them had 5 total touchdowns. And all of a sudden this defense just, they're not making plays at all. They seem to be completely lost on where to be in coverage. They seem to be not swarming to the football and making hits at all. It almost looks, it actually even looks worse than the Alex Grinch defenses that we were seeing the last few years of Lincoln Riley's time on the Sooner sideline. Take a look at what Coach Venables had to say about the game this weekend, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more.
Disappointed again, and obviously not playing very well today in any way, shape, or form. We talked about starting fast and efficient and playing well early, and we obviously we didn't do that. Gave up too many big plays today, and there was a couple of busts for touchdowns today, both in the passing game and the running game. And I think we had 4 runs of 35 yards or more, and 5 or 6 plays of 25 yards or more in the passing game. Again, we're not very good, obviously, right now. We got a lot to get better at and a lot to improve.
Well, you heard it there. They're not very good right now. And I think that there's a lot of people that would say that that's about as big an understatement as you could possibly put out there. As you heard there from Coach Venables, this Oklahoma defense gave up touchdowns on 3 of the first 4 possessions for TCU on Saturday. Max Duggan and offensive coordinator Garrett Riley, who is the brother of former head coach Lincoln Riley, pretty much dialed up whatever in the world they wanted to the entirety of the day, particularly in that first half. En route to 41 points in the opening half, 27 points in the opening quarter, and never really being tested, particularly once Dylan Gabriel went out with a head injury to that cheap shot from Jamari Hodge. We'll get to the offense a little bit in a moment, but I got to tell you, folks miss me with this entire diatribe that a lot of you folks have put on about last week's loss to Kansas State, and even this week's loss having anything to do with Jeff Lebby, Dylan Gabriel, or that offense, because overall you gave up this defense, which is what Venables is known for, gave up 418 total yards to Max Duggan 1 week after giving up 382 total yards and 5 touchdowns to Adrian Martinez, who only a week before that could only muster 10 points in a loss to Tulane. So miss me with the fact that, and during that game with the Adrian Martinez against Kansas State, Dylan Gabriel had more total yards than he did, 391, 4 touchdowns. The Oklahoma offense put up 550 total yards, which was more than K-State had in 509, and 34 points, which should have been enough if you don't give up that 509 yards and can't put your hands on that quarterback, particularly on one of the plays, which was the 3rd and 17, where he goes for 40 yards. 4 rushing touchdowns. They didn't stop Deuce either, the running back from Kansas State. And this week, Max Duggan looked even more like a Heisman candidate as the undefeated Horned Frogs. He was 23 of 33 for 302 yards, 3 touchdowns through the air. He added 5 rushes for 116 yards and 2 more scores on the ground, 418 total yards, 5 touchdowns again, 2 weeks in a row given up to the quarterback. Folks, this defense that gave up a grand total of 30 points in its first 3 games and had everybody thinking that, this number 7 ranking was only going to get better, has now given up 96 points in the last 2 weeks to go with 1,177 yards. What in the world just so again, miss me with the offensive stuff. I don't want to hear about the offense. I don't care. And even, right now, the offense may be the only saving grace for Oklahoma, if there is one at the moment. And the fact that Dylan Gabriel probably isn't going to be playing this week in the Red River game, when you go into the concussion protocol, and if you saw that hit, you know what I'm talking about. Not to mention the fact that you have this big controversy down in Miami over Tua Tagovailoa playing 1 week after apparently getting a head injury. He gets a second one, and it's even worse. They're firing doctors, the entire training staff, I think, in Miami over that one. So I don't see Oklahoma risking anything with Dylan here, nor should they, by the way, even though there isn't any kind of there's no experience in that quarterback room aside from him. General Booty's played a bit, I think, at a JUCO or a small school. He transferred in this season. He didn't look great after he went in this past weekend. Obviously, things are looking really dim if that defense doesn't somehow find a way to turn it back around, which at this point, I don't know why you would think that they would. This is a problem, folks. This is a big problem. And look, first off, we'll get into the to the craziness of some of you fans out there that have these ridiculous expectations. And now all of a sudden you're calling for Venables' head. A week ago, you had a group of folks that were giving death threats to players after the loss to Kansas State. What the hell is wrong with you folks? We'll get into that in a little bit. But I got to tell you, this is a bad look. I'm not of the belief that, first off, this narrative that's going around, started by Colin Cowherd, but picked up on by even fans that hate him from Oklahoma, that are saying that Brent Venables inherited an 11-2 team. He inherited a program that went 11-2 a year ago. There's not very much of that team left on this deal. So it just to show you what I'm talking about here, the defense that wasn't very good under Alex Grinch and Lincoln a year ago is missing 13 guys that were somewhere on that depth chart for the defense from a year ago. The only 2 players that really gave a whole lot of defensively had a whole lot of contribution a year ago were Woody Washington, the cornerback, who had a couple of interceptions in the Red River Shootout, and then, of course, Jalen Redmond, the defensive end, who is absolutely great. But the rest of these guys, most of them are either transferred in, you don't know who they are. They actually lost 6 out of 9 linebackers on the depth chart, period. On offense, you lost both quarterbacks, Caleb Williams, Spencer Rattler, along with Mario Williams, Cody Jackson, Michael Woods, Jaden Hazelwood. I mean, the best receivers that you had aside from Marvin Mims, who really didn't have a whole lot of, aside from the Red River game last year, wasn't really utilized very well. And in fact, he wasn't planning to stay if Lincoln was still here. That's why he didn't go. Braden Willis played last year. He was the 3rd stringer tight end, but didn't play a whole bunch. You lost 3 other guys off the offensive line, along with Austin Stogner and Jeremiah Hall at the tight end position. some of your best running backs. You did have obviously Eric Gray coming back. He was also hurt this weekend in the second half of the game with TCU. So whether or not he makes it back or not, we'll find out on that one as well. This was not a cupboard that was stocked fully. Nevertheless, even I was starting to buy into some of the Kool-Aid talk about them winning the conference. I never really got to that point where I thought that they were going to make the playoff this year. Winning the conference, I figured they might compete for it. At the moment right now, after watching this defense the last 2 weeks, I'm not sure that they win another game. And particularly if their offense isn't just all world blowing everybody out of the water. But again, miss me with the offense is the problem stuff, because it isn't. When you give up, again, 1,177 yards and 96 points in 2 games, no offense. I don't care if Caleb Williams and Mario Williams were back, along with there's no way they wouldn't have won with last year's team giving up that kind of points and yardage in the last 2 games. I don't care what anybody says. It wouldn't happen. And this is the thing. I'm a fan of Venables. I think that he is bringing the way that he is trying to set the tone for this program moving forward has been admirable. I love it. I love the way that they've been going about things. I think that that's been the biggest plus so far this year. They got rid of Gundy, the receiver coach, for, obviously pulling some ridiculous stuff, using the N-word during a team meeting. That needed to happen. So the culture is definitely turned in the right direction. My problem is that I'm worried that this is a guy who he's known for his defenses. His defenses at Clemson, most people will tell you, were at least as important, if not more important, than any other part of the program that Dabo Swinney was running and them winning 2 national titles. Those defenses were dominant up front, at the linebacker position, everywhere around. They were dominant defenses. They took out Alabama, one of the best Alabama teams that they had, got smoked by a freshman quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, and an amazing defense that was headed up by Venables. Now, that concerns you whenever all of a sudden it seemed like they had fallen even further back from what it looked like last year, with Alex Grinch running the defense and his, quote, speed defense and not having any beef up front. There has been some of the questions that I've seen on Twitter and places about why are they running a 3-man front? I think it's fairly it's definitely a fair question when the big guys that you need to run a front like that just aren't there yet. The recruiting classes that you got coming in 23 appears to going to have some of those guys, and that's being addressed. But as of right now, it isn't. Bottom line is when you give up the kind of yardage and points that they have in the last 2 weeks, I mean, TCU had 668 total yards, and again, K-State had over 500 total yards in their game a week ago in Norman in that upset. But this game wasn't close from start to finish. You had a fumble early on. I don't think that the offense is looking great. Their first 5 possessions went turnover. Marvin Mims had a fumble after a catch in the first series. Then they went, what was it? Let's make sure that I get this right. They went after that. It was punt, field goal, turnover on downs, punt, touchdown. They had 10 possessions in the opening half, 17 points, 5 total punts in the opening half. Of course, Dylan Gabriel did go down early in the second quarter when he was hit in the head while sliding by TCU linebacker Jamoy Hodge. Hodge was ejected and should have been ejected. It almost started a complete brawl after the hit. It was definitely dirty. I don't know what the rule is on that as far as if you have to miss time the next week. But it just seems like, but it is football. You don't like to see it. And even as Venables said, you don't like to see it. The main thing is that we're praying for Dylan to come back sooner than later and just to be healthy. That's the main thing. Just hoping that he's healthy soon and able to get back out there. If he's not out there, there's just not a lot of experience in that quarterback room aside from that. Eric Gray also went down in the second half, top running back for the Sooners. They just did it. 55-24, folks, and it just wasn't even that close. But we're talking about a 30-point loss that was followed by them giving up 500 yards the week before to a team that only had 10 points the week before that against Tulane. So something is definitely falling off the rails here. It certainly doesn't look good for them going into this week against Texas, particularly when the running game, they gave up 361 rushing yards to TCU this past week. The best running back in the country, Bijan Robinson, will be going up against this defense this weekend. It could be a long day at the Cotton Bowl for Oklahoma. And the thing is I'm wondering what's going on here. I didn't necessarily expect them to be great defensively right off the bat, just because of the personnel. Again, as I said, this is not the same team that went 11-2 a year ago. It's not close to the same team that went 11-2 a year ago. So that's a bunk statement. That being said, you would expect them to be a little better. And my wonder is the defense a little more complicated than what they're used to? Is it confusing them? It doesn't look like they're playing with any kind of reckless abandon. It's almost like they're confused, for sure. You see a lot of missed tackles, but it seems like they're out of position a lot. And he said it. You had 4 runs over 35 yards the other day, 6 passes for more than 25 yards. And a lot of those times there wasn't anyone in the vicinity of the TCU receivers. I know that obviously Garrett Riley has done a great job as the OC. Sonny Dykes is one of those air raid guys as well. They have a nice offense. They've looked good so far. They beat SMU a week ago when, they had lost 2 in a row to them while Sonny and Garrett were there. Now, what happens from here, though? I don't know that I still expect TCU to really challenge for the Big 12 championship, but I certainly don't expect it for Oklahoma either at this point, particularly when they can't get off the field. They had a chance to go in and tie the game a week before against Kansas State, had a 3rd and 17. They give up 40 yards to a scrambling quarterback. Wasn't a design run. It was a scramble, and he gets 40 yards out of it. This is not conducive for winning a lot of football games. In fact, the only one that you might expect them to win here on out might be that West Virginia game, and that's a maybe too, because if you can't stop the run, what are you going to do? So if anybody is going to get this thing turned around defensively, you would think that Venables and his staff should be able to do that. But you got to hope that that's what happens, because at this point, you tend to wonder if that's even going to happen. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's a lot of big plays that they gave up. As he said, that's the biggest thing. And that's the problem that we were seeing with Lincoln Riley and his defenses that weren't obviously getting recruited or anything like that. If this is going to take until some of Brent Venables' recruits get here, that means this is going to be a long season. Now, what I will say is this. Even these expectations that have obviously boiled over into a ridiculous furor from a lot of fans of Oklahoma fans, that it really kind of makes me sick as a fan myself. That listen, folks, even Nick Saban went 7-6 his first season at Alabama. Nick Saban. Bob Stoops' first season, 7-5. His second season, they win the national title. Pete Carroll at USC, they didn't win the first year. They were better. They didn't win anything. They didn't get better until about the third year until they won one. I don't expect Lincoln to win it this. I don't care if he's 5-0 or not. They're not winning it this season either. And then even guys like Jimmy Johnson at the U didn't get it done in his first year as their head coach. This is not something that happens. So why anybody expected Venables to come in here and win a national championship, especially after all the defections that went with Riley or left the program because he had left it to go somewhere else. I don't see how in the world anybody could have really expected it. And even I kind of drank some of the Kool-Aid about them competing, but I didn't see this. I tell you what, the other thing is that this is a Big 12 conference that there's a lot of parity. And I think that, especially when you start looking at the fact that Kansas is now 5-0 on the season, has a true Heisman contender in Jalen Daniels. When the worst team, the supposed worst team of the conference is 5-0, this is going to be a tough season for everybody. And obviously Texas is improved. They did lose a week ago at Texas Tech. They had a 10-point lead. That's an issue for them. But they still, they're going to have Quinn Ewers coming back, if not this week in the Red River game, probably the week after that. But all signs point to him being back soon. They have the best running back in the country, as I said a minute ago. Baylor, even though they lost to Oklahoma State, who, hey, listen, I got to eat crow on the Cowboys right now. They looked very good against Baylor the other day. They even had 2 interceptions on Blake Shapen towards the end of the game to seal the victory. They don't look like they're backing down either. Iowa State, even though they're 0-2 to start off the Big 12 season, they're coming off their first ever win under Matt Campbell over Iowa. I feel like this is a team that can still do damage. Kansas State, despite the Tulane loss, is now 2-0 in the Big 12 after a win over Texas Tech this week. They're the real deal. They have, whatever happened with Adrian Martinez last week, where he ran wild, he turned around and had another big game for him this week. He seems to have that confidence back after the way that he played in Oklahoma last week. Again, it's very concerning, and you wonder if they're going to be able to hold this thing together, particularly with some of you fans acting the way you are. There is absolutely zero excuse for what we found out on Tuesday that, you had Sooner tight end Braden Willis reported that there were players that were put in a group chat. I don't know if it was on Twitter or somewhere on a message board somewhere, but they were stuck in a group chat with some fans who apparently made death threats towards them for the way they played against Kansas State. That's ridiculous. That helps not at all as far as recruiting goes. Then when Hicks decided to go to Texas A&M this past week, apparently there were a group of Sooner fans who started bashing him for the decision, which was probably about money in view of the fact that Texas A&M's forking it out there like crazy right now. I will say this, when it comes to, it's about time for Oklahoma to start doing the same thing, folks. Even the NIL group that you could be a part of, the Norman NIL group, nobody's hardly in it. There's 900 people, 80,000 people fill up the stadium every time they play a home game. And we've got 900 people that can't even, chip in enough to get them 50,000 for 80 players that aren't starters necessarily or marquee name guys. This is a problem, though, that somebody needs to come up with some cash here and start getting these big time recruits. I know that they've done great recruiting so far. They're number 6 in the country, but look, the writing's on the wall as to how this thing's going to have to work, and money's going to have a big part of it. Okay. So I don't know what's going to take, but folks, stop expecting ridiculousness thing. You're going to call for Venables' head after 2 losses, first 5 games of the year. when again, and somebody even repeated what Cowherd had said about, he inherited an 11-2 team while Lincoln Riley inherited a 3-9 team, which is absolutely the opposite of that, because he took his 11-2 team with him to LA for the most part, particularly with that quarterback. And, look, he didn't leave the cupboard full here. 13 guys off the defensive depth chart, 11 off of the offensive depth chart are gone. That is not the same team that went 11-2. The program was 11-2 a year ago, not this team. So that's ridiculous. So stop making these or having these expectations that all of a sudden these guys are supposed to go win the national title in his first year. Again, Nick Saban was 7-6 his first year. He didn't win a national title until his third year at the school. He didn't win a national title his first year at LSU either. Wake up. This is ridiculous, and you have to expect that there's going to be some growing pains here while they get this thing under control. Lincoln Riley, for as great as he was as an offensive play caller and a recruiter on the offensive side, was just as not good recruiting defensive players and making sure that it was a whole team and that the culture was what it needed to be. He wasn't. This is going to take some time. And the only thing you can do by acting as crazy as some of you are on social media is scare off these other recruits. Who needs this for losing a football game? It's football. It's not life and death.